This is Rosen Institute's Your Law Firm, where Ned Days and Lee Rosen cover management, marketing, finance, and new technologies for building the practice you deserve. Rosen Institute members received this episode early, as well as exclusive segments on following up with your prospective clients and an answer to a member question about open book management. Get access to everything you're missing at roseninstitute.com/join. Here's Ned Days.
It's time for your tech tip. I have 4 tools for you to try today. First up is Calendar Pipe, which you can find at calendarpipe.com. This is one of those apps the tech nerd side of me doesn't want to like, because you could probably build something similar with a few Zapier workflows, but the fact that it solves a problem I have regularly and I have never bothered to build a workflow for it tells me it is probably worth the minimal fee. Calendar Pipe basically watches all of your connected calendars and automatically copies over events between them based on rules that you set. So if you have multiple calendars you are trying to stay on top of, one for work, a personal calendar, a family calendar, one from a civic group or an organization, you can make sure that something like a vacation or a doctor visit added to your family calendar automatically blocks off time on your work calendar or any other combination of calendar updates. You get a very straightforward visual builder for sync rules. You choose which calendars to watch, which ones to send new events to. You can filter the events based on keyword, event duration, organizer, day of the week, and a lot more. You can adjust whether the events added to the destination calendar are private or public, busy or free. You can overwrite the title and description if you want. There's a lot of room to make the events look and behave just how you want them when they are created. There is also an AI mode where you can just describe in plain text what kind of events you want to sync or block, and it will construct the rules for you. There's a free plan that supports 2 calendars and 1 rule, and it syncs every 15 minutes. The paid plan supports unlimited calendars, unlimited rules, and refreshes every 5 minutes. That's $4 a month. Next up isn't a separate tool or an app. It is something that has just been added to the Chrome web browser. It's called Chrome Skills. It's kind of like Skills in your LLM, although a little more limited, at least for now. It's basically just a way to save a prompt that you can then use on pages and across selected tabs in the future. As simple as that sounds, I think it actually makes the AI sidebar that has been in Chrome and other browsers for a while now a lot more useful. Having an AI chat session about the page in your browser has previously been pretty constrained. You can ask it to summarize things or find things or format things if you know what you're looking for, but you are basically starting from scratch every time. Having the ability to create one-click skills that do things like grab headlines or data and turn them into a spreadsheet, extract structured data into lists, and then use them repeatedly across any page you want is actually really useful. Up until now, I haven't found the AI sidebar approach in Chrome or Atlas or similar browsers to be something I bothered with very often, but this small change feels like it brings a lot of utility to that concept. Now, this was announced a couple of weeks ago. I have updated and restarted and done everything I can, but I still can't seem to save my prompts as skills or access the skills library Google has created just yet, but hopefully it is available soon for everybody. Sticking on the Chrome theme for a bit, the next tool is sendlinks.app. I am forever sending myself links via iMessage or Slack or email or whatever method is most convenient based on the app or device I am in at the moment, which means I have no idea where I saved anything, and I'm always trying to hunt down a website I sent myself 2 weeks ago. Sendlinks.app is a Chrome extension that essentially acts like a third-party bookmarks manager. You tap a button to save a URL of the current page, or you can paste in a URL in the Sendlinks website, or message it via Telegram if you are pirating movies or watching gory, uncensored war footage or doing whatever people do on Telegram. There is no tagging or organizing. Everything is sorted automatically by AI. You can browse and filter by domain, date, keyword, and other criteria. There is a PIN-protected private mode, I guess if for some reason you want to give somebody access to your account and don't mind the awkward question about why you have a private folder and what exactly is in there. Definitely not an album of reality TV stars wearing Crocs, though. Thanks for asking. Sendlinks is free, at least for the moment. No word on how or if they plan to monetize that. Hopefully not by making you pay a monthly fee to prevent them from leaking what is in your private mode. And last is Catzilla, available at katzilla.dev. I was on the fence about including this one, but I think the era that we are in of AI app builders actually makes it applicable much more widely than it would have been not that long ago. It's an API for accessing what they claim to be every US government data set. I am sure you can access these for free, but finding where they are and how to get to them would likely be a bit of a chore. This is basically a way to get data from all kinds of agencies. The SEC, FDA, court opinions, clinical trials, everything from court listener, the recap docket, CPSC recalls. There's data available from lots of other countries too. Now, you will have to build something to use this data, but at this point, it's basically just a matter of pointing Claude Code, GPT Codex, Google Anti-Gravity, or one of the dozens of AI app builders we've talked about before at the catzilla.dev site, giving it your account credentials, and letting it rip on a dashboard or a tool. If that is still a step too far, they have a service for building your own digests from the data they produce, federal filings, recalls, bills, and rules. They also have an interface to just ask questions. It's essentially a Claude instance with access to everything they provide. And everything it spits back at you, whether it's from the API, the digest, or the chat, comes fully sourced with the relevant URLs on the government websites. There's a free tier for everything and paid tiers with higher limits and more functionality, like being able to deliver those digests directly to Slack. I'm Ned Days, and that's your tech tip. And now for your moment of concise advice. My Australian wife has pointed out something about Americans, or maybe it's just Southerners, that I can't unsee, or maybe unhear is the right term, now that she has said it. When two Americans greet each other, one of them almost always says, "How are you?" And the other one almost always says, "Fine," or "Doing well," regardless of what is actually happening in their life. The dog may have just died that morning, or the business could be on the verge of collapse. They might be mid-divorce, and the answer is still, "Oh, doing well, thanks. How about you?" It's just a matter of cultural habit. We are not asking how things are as a proper question, expecting a proper response. It's basically just a weird cultural procedure for starting a conversation. We may actually get to all of the depressing stuff that's going on later in the conversation, but the opening at least is just kind of a script we recite on autopilot. And I thought about this the other day because I ran into someone, and before I could launch into the usual greeting, she asked me a very specific question about a family member who had recently undergone surgery. And I kind of locked up for a second because there wasn't a standard answer loaded and ready to go. I couldn't just defer to the script. I had to actually think about the question, and the answer I gave her was probably a lot more honest than it would have been even if she had asked later on in the conversation. That very specific question caused me to give a much more specific answer. How is everything going? Wouldn't have done that. At this point, it's not even designed to do that. It's basically just a conversational handshake. I think it's worth being aware of this dynamic, especially when we are asking for feedback from clients. We talk a fair bit about gauging client satisfaction throughout the case and asking for feedback, and I think it's one of those things that a lot of firm owners want on the one hand, but don't want to ask for on the other, or maybe they don't want to hear in some circumstances. You have probably been in a restaurant where a waiter or a chef or an owner comes out and asks how everything is. I have on rare occasion, though, had a much more pointed question asked of me. Something like, "How is the soup? We are trying out a few recipes, and this one is a bit of an experiment." When I'm asked, "How is everything?" my normal response is to say everything is fine because I just want to get on with my meal. And 99 times out of 100, they don't really care what I have to say. They just want me to know that they are checking in on me, which is totally fine. But a specific question like that is a lot more likely to circumvent my cultural programming. I not only have to think about it and wrestle with my actual opinions, but the door is open for much more honest feedback. I don't feel like I am making a scene or pissing them off when they ask for very specific advice about a specific issue. Now, there are lots of ways to get feedback and gauge how a client is feeling during a case. I am not particularly opposed to automated methods of collecting feedback during a case. Those can be useful. Somebody who is upset is usually going to push whatever button you stick in front of him to let you know. So it's not a bad way to get that kind of generalized alert, but a more personal interaction is always going to be better. Whether it's an automated email or text message or a phone call or a question during a meeting, though, your goal should be to extract real, actionable information. A lot of us, and I have been here, just want to check the box that says, "I asked for feedback." We ask a very vague question to which we don't really want a response, and then we say we've done our job. And then we have a very convenient excuse when we face what feels like criticism out of the blue later on. Oh, I've been asking for feedback for years and nobody has ever said anything about that. But instead of asking the generic, overly broad question like, how is everything going? It is worth thinking through the kinds of concerns that you know your clients have from having represented them in the past. They don't always know what's reasonable to worry or not worry about, and they might be avoiding the conversation and the confrontation just as much as we are. Given your practice area, what is something specific that people get stressed about at this stage of the case? Ask that. A lot of firms have built habits and systems around asking for feedback, which is great, but they are not collecting information that is particularly useful. So we have to not only think about the kind of information we want, we also have to snap the clients out of their default customer service interaction script. They are probably busy and polite, and they assume we are doing our best. So when we ask them a generic question, they do the equivalent of tapping the happy face icon on the iPad screen in the airport bathroom because they are just trying to get back to their gate. I would suggest that this week you pick one client and ask a very specific question in an attempt to solicit some useful feedback. It may be a new client or one you've had for a while, that doesn't really matter, but ask them a specific question about working with you that is relevant to where they are in the process. Something like, when you first called our office, how long did it take before somebody got back to you, and was that what you expected? Or, out of all the documents we sent you last month, which one was the hardest to understand? Something that requires some thought and a proper answer. The question needs to be specific enough that the reflexive politeness doesn't kick in and they can't just get away with fine. Once you've tried that a few times, think about the automated feedback methods that you are using and how those can be improved. We did the equivalent of the happy, neutral, sad face bathroom kiosk in an automated email at our practice. People clicked it, but we only got anything useful after talking one-on-one with them if they didn't give us a happy face. It would have been trivial, even in an automated setup, to ask more specific and relevant questions based on the case status or the data we had about them in our CRM. If you are automating these emails or texts, read the actual questions you're asking. If they are some version of how did we do or rate your experience, in the event that you are getting feedback, it's likely nothing you can use without a lot of follow-up. What could you be asking that would prompt them to give you a more honest answer from the get-go? That's your moment of concise advice. Wrapping up from Jacksonville, thank you for joining us today. Never forget that what you are doing is important work. Small, consistent steps focusing on marketing, management, and technology are how we build better firms. And you are 1 week closer to the practice you deserve. Until next time, I'm Ned Days.
Thanks for listening to Your Law Firm. Subscribe to the Friday File at roseninstitute.com and join thousands of other lawyers who are working on instead of in their businesses. You'll find safe, successful, actionable approaches for transforming your practice. Join us today at roseninstitute.com.